1 year ago, the greatest of all wars came to an end. The people of the world relieved their tired nerves in a wild burst of celebration. In the far Pacific, where the mighty ships of the U.S. Navy commanded the approaches to Japan, the big guns were silent, the men tense, expectant. Scarcely 4 months after the defeat of Germany, the last of the Axis, tenacious, fanatical Japan, had surrendered on the eve of invasion. The Japs had not quit for lack of men or arms. Great armies waited to defend their home islands. Artillery, suicide planes, new amphibian tanks were ready for the final battle. But as the Jap prepared for invasion, a lone B-29 dropped a single atomic bomb on the munition city of Hiroshima. Smoke rose 50,000 feet as an explosion equal to 20,000 tons of TNT brought the greatest man-made disaster in the history of the world. The Japs were stunned, but still they hesitated. So 3 days later, another bomb fell on Nagasaki, wiping out 1/3 of that industrial center. That was the final blow. Even the fanatical Japanese could see the danger of total annihilation. So they surrendered, unwillingly, but unconditionally. The prologue to the great drama of surrender was begun. The Americans moved swiftly toward occupation. First soldiers to set foot on Japanese soil came appropriately enough from the air, as troops of the 11th Airborne Division landed at Atsugi. Then Marines and Blue Jackets moved in at the Yokosuka Naval Base. They went ashore armed to the teeth, but there was no bleeding or dying on the beaches that day. They walked in unchallenged, unopposed, as conquerors. Surrender of the base was swift, precise. Included was the once mighty battleship Nagato, later used as a target ship for the atomic bomb test in Operation Crossroads. Transports from Okinawa swarmed onto Atsugi Airfield to prepare for the arrival of the Supreme Allied Commander. Wrecked Jap planes littered the battered field. But Japanese labor cleared away the debris. Atsugi was American manned and ready when the C-54 arrived, bearing the man who was to direct the future destiny of Japan. Bataan was remembered, and avenged. MacArthur moved to his next great role aboard the USS Missouri in Tokyo Bay. Here on the morning of September 2nd, the drama of surrender reached its climax. In a ceremony that lasted only 20 minutes, the fate of Japan was sealed forever. The 11-man Japanese delegation was photographed by cameramen, perched at every vantage point to record the momentous event for posterity. The stage was set. General MacArthur walked from a cabin to open the surrender ceremonies.
We are gathered here, representatives of the major warring powers, to conclude a solemn agreement whereby peace may be restored. The terms and conditions upon which surrender of the Japanese imperial forces is here to be given and accepted are contained in the instrument of surrender now before you. I now invite the representatives of the Emperor of Japan and the Japanese government and the Japanese Imperial General Headquarters to sign the instrument of surrender at the places indicated.
On behalf of Emperor Hirohito, Foreign Minister Mamoru Shigemitsu signed for the Japanese government. Japan accepted unconditional surrender according to the provisions of the Potsdam Declaration.
The Supreme Commander for the Allied powers will now sign on behalf of all the nations at war with Japan. Will General Wainwright and General Percival step forward and accompany me while I sign?
General Jonathan Wainwright, liberated hero of Corregidor, and British General Arthur Percival, who was forced to surrender Singapore, stood at attention behind MacArthur as he began to write his name with the first of 5 pens. Pen number 1 went to General Wainwright. The second pen was handed to General Percival. The third and fourth were earmarked for the National Archives and West Point. The fifth, Mac kept for himself.
These proceedings are closed.
The main drama of surrender was over. Now, throughout the Japanese Empire, in 5 designated surrender regions, the field armies of Japan laid down their guns. All enemy forces in China yielded to Generalissimo Chiang Kai-shek. Those in Manchuria and Northern Korea to the Soviets. In the Burma theater, East Indies and Southwest Pacific, they gave up to Admiral Mountbatten and the Australian commander. Admiral Nimitz took the surrender in the Central Pacific. And General MacArthur in Japan, Southern Korea, and the Philippines. High in Luzon in misty Baguio, a great moment came for Generals Wainwright and Percival. They, who had been forced to raise the white flag in 1942, now saw an arch foe capitulate. General Yamashita, the notorious Tiger of Malaya, who was later executed for his war crimes. Wake Island. All America was moved by reverent pride at the news that Old Glory flew once more over that tiny atoll in the Central Pacific. Here, where the Marine Corps had again immortalized itself by its heroic defense, wreckage still remained of the handful of Grumman Wildcats that had helped fight off an entire Jap task force for 14 days.